As a part of our tutorial, I will now present the Families in the Wild dataset, which we built at Smile Lab, lab at Northeastern University, and in collaboration with UMass Dartmouth. My name is Joseph Robinson, and I will be presenting this portion of the tutorial. First, let's take a look at what is kinship recognition. The goal of kinship recognition is to classify different families, to be able to identify who is related and who is not related. As we can see here, with this toy example, the Griffin family and the Simpson family are separate families. Quagmire sort of stuck in the middle, unrelated to either. Furthermore, we would like to identify different relationship types. For instance, who are the parents and the respective children and the siblings. So across generations, also within the same generation, and taking it a step further, kinship recognition also the kind of holy grail of the problem would be to populate family trees. So, given the Simpson family be able to go back several generations, identifying who's related to who, how they're related, and essentially aiding in the building of family trees, fine-grained classification. So, why would we want to do this? There's several applications to this problem. And for instance, to aid search investigations. Back in 2013, the Boston Bombers had struck at the end of the finish line in the Boston Marathon. We had found these two images on cameras, and the facial recognition had failed to identify who either were. With that, they had to release the photos, and a bunch of mayhem had stemmed from that. Not to say that this could have solved the problem, however, these were brothers. Had we known they were brothers, we could have drastically reduced the search space. Also, for missing children, often online, children are found being exploited. These children are likely not in any database, however, their family members very well could be. The modern day refugee crisis, families are split all over the world, and if we were able to reconnect families that are split using cheap security cams, say at each of the different camps, that would also be able to reconnect families. We also have Ancestry.com and other genealogy services and research related topics related to these biometrics and social media applications. There are abundant other applications. However, here's just a few to highlight the importance of this problem. So with this being such an important and relevant task, why don't we see it in practice? And we sat down, we brainstormed, and we found that there were a few reasons that were behind the reason we don't see this used in modern day systems. First off, it's a challenging task, as you would imagine. The variation and the intraclass and the interclass is quite quite dense, and the interclass can be quite sparse. Separated families that both look the same. Individuals that look the same could very well not be related, while relatives don't always look similar. And when they do, it's not always the same traits that are inherited. There's an insufficient data distribution prior to our release of this data set. The data that was being used, each of the data sets were smaller. They were constrained to certain domains, and we really needed a better representation of family imagery worldwide. And with that stemmed the lack of label data, here being to support modern day complex modeling such as deep learning. There was no large-scale data set that could support such a task. So our goal was to build a large-scale kinship recognition data set such that we can address these three issues with more data, better data distribution, and address the challenging task with the modern day deep learning supported by the label data. So we drew up this simple pipeline for which we built the Families in the Wild data set. First, we wanted to collect, label, then benchmark, and promote our data. So first, for the data collection, we drew up a list of 1,000 1,000 individuals for which we will find data for. In other words, each of these were kind of the core of, okay, let's find family members for Michael Jackson. Let's find family members for Bruce Lee. Let's find family members for Matt Damon, for instance. We had 12 undergrads from different parts of the globe come up with this list, and their task was to generate the 1,000 families and focus on the part of the globe that they are from. Two of the students are from Latin America, and they focus primarily on people south of the equator, while three from the U.S. will focus on the north. The same with Asia, Europe, China, etc. Now, for each of the families, we want at least 10 family photos along with profile faces for as many family members as we could collect. And that would be more clear why later. And for each, we collected the URLs in the metadata. So say here, for instance, we had the Bruce Lee family. We went online, found at least 10 family photos, collected those URLs, and for each, we also collected the text metadata to support that photo. Now, let's take a look at how we wanted ground truth labels that can encapsulate the family information in a robust manner. So here, we first identified those that were in the photo. Here we have Shannon, Linda, and Bruce. Then we wanted to capture the family tree. So here you can see the kind of the family tree in the form of a matrix, the relationship matrix, where here 1 represents the parent of, 2 spouse of, and 4 the child of. And you can see the kind of inverse relationship between member 1, who is Bruce, being the spouse of member 2, Linda, and the parent of member 3, Shannon. And then over here, we have, to the right of the matrix, we have the gender, which would infer the type of relationship. So with the parent of the child, that would infer that that's the father of the daughter. And in the middle, you can see the actual family tree that the matrix converts to. So that was the family level label. The image level label, now we would have multiple instances of each member, again, at least 10 family photos. And then we would store for MID1 several instances of Bruce, MID2, several instances of Linda and Shannon for MID3, and as you can see, with various ages throughout each of the photos. Now, the labeling was a bit was some work that we saw at the beginning, and would take some time. So we wanted to find a way to automate some of this. So after labeling a good deal, we're like, okay, how can we speed this up? And the first way we went about this was leveraging both the face information that we already had and the metadata of the existing photos. For instance, we had some samples of Bruce, Linda, and Shannon stored away in a folder, and now the 3 photos on the left are unlabeled. We first ran a face detector, and then we ran a name entity recognizer off the shelf from Stanford, and we aligned. So first we found all the profile pictures by saying, okay, there's one face, one name. We're going to assume profile picture, and that's a nice alignment. And then we went 2, 2, 3, 3, and in the middle you can see 4, 4. There's 4 faces, 4 names. Now we also use off-the-shelf SVM to score the visual evidence and the contextual evidence. And then, as you can see, we got to more difficult cases as the third picture in the middle, where we have 3 faces, 2 names. 2 of them are Linda, so that's a little less not so aligned as we worded it. Not 1-to-1, but it would be a 3-to-2, and then we had to use the visual evidence along with the contextual evidence. So the contextual evidence would infer the label, where the visual evidence would kind of support that with higher scores. So specifically, we trained classifiers and we mined labels. So we used a VGG16 trained on faces to encode the faces, and then we trained off-the-shelf SVMs to sort of sweep the space of each family. We did one family at a time to include the hard negatives would be the family members. So we did this such that one family we go through, we have, for instance, here, 3 SVMs for each of the 3 MIDs, and then we would kind of sweep through that space, and we would classify all of Bruce, Linda, and Shannon with high confidence, and then add them to our training and keep improving our SVMs in that manner. This this of course left some unlabeled, some unconfident, some low confident scores, and those ones uh, we further labeled using a novel clustering algorithm. So there were many more members to this. There was about 9 members to this family, 10 members in this family. But for the sake of simplicity, that's why we just selected 3 prior. So now here we have some labels. As you can see, we mined them from the text and the visual evidence. So we have some labels here in the middle, which we considered side information. Side information is the second term in this. Essentially, it's a k-means clustering using cosine similarity plus the side information, which helps support and guide the clustering to a better end result. So we leverage the labeled faces in that manner. And essentially, the unlabeled we then clustered to generate labeled proposals. And again, just a simple k-means using cosine similarity plus the side information with the lambda term. So how well does this work, and why don't we just use constraints? Well, state-of-the-art constraints actually does not work well for this problem. As you can see, the bottom red lines show that the constraints actually add conflicting information, the hard constraints. So with that, you can see that it never actually improves over the baseline k-means where no side information is used at all, where no labels are used. It's actually quite worse. And you can see above the blue lines, Oz gradually gets better as more unlabeled data is added. This is clustering families, so looking how families should not be constrained, saying, okay, they must be the same family if they're related, and this is similar to them, pull them in the family because of the high interclass variation. I'm sorry, low interclass variation. So then for the labels, we consider those just proposals. So we had a human sit back at a GUI and essentially validate these proposals by saying, okay, so-and-so, this is true, that is the same member, and that is the correct relationship. And then we were to generate the final labels as the output of this GUI. And as you can see, even new members could have been added at this time if they were not properly identified during that process. So how much time do we save doing this opposed to having a human sit back and click away? Time per image decreased by about 89%, and clicks per image, which is number of either keyboard or mouse inputs, decreased by 97.67% per image. So you can see here that we took 7 sample families and we compared the two, and doing it manually entirely without the semi-atomic process, it took almost 3 hours, whereas using this, it took less than 20 minutes. And this is only 7 families of 1,000. So you can imagine that would scale up quite a bit. The number of clicks went from over 4,000 to under 100. So great savings was had by this. Let's take a look at some of the sample families. You can see that we went for both diversity between families and also a lot of samples per family. These are just subsets of each family. Some of the more renowned families, better known families, some of the either royal families or big names, say sport or celebrities, which majority were, but here are just some sample families, some sample family photos to give you a feel from not only in terms of time, you can see like the bottom left, a lot of black and white older imagery to say newer modern day bottom right, like the Gronkowski family, a New England Patriot football player. In terms of numbers, you can see here that we have, where the bottom row, compared to existing, we have 1,000 families, which is much more than any prior. It's comparable to TS Kinface, But Tia's king face is a different family. Tia's king face has tri-subject pairs, meaning father, mother, child, and essentially they have a different family for each tri-subject pair. So you can see the number of families is 1/3 of the number of people, and that's actually the number of images as well. The number of people, same as number of images. So here we have 1,000 families. We have over 10,000 people and over 30,000 faces with age varying and with family trees. A sample family tree. This is one of our bigger families, the royal family. You can see we don't only have breadth in terms of generation, so across the same generation, you can see that cousins, siblings, etc. But we also have depth going back 6 generations. Again, this is one of our larger families, but it gives you a kind of feel for how we structured the data. And this is all stored in the family relationship matrix as shown previously. So let's take a look at the task evaluations. The first task is the family classification, which is a one-to-many classification task. We use 564 families for this, and reason being because we chose the families with at least 6 family members, leave one out, and then train on the rest, and then test on the one that's left out. In other words, this member, the probe to the left of the gallery, what family is that probe from? And you can see that Shannon is related to Brandon, Bruce, and Linda, which Shannon was unseen until test time. We want to say that she's part of the Lee family. And that's the closed form classification one-to-many task. The more popular task, the kingship verification, which is the one-to-one Boolean task, to classify whether king or non-king, is we train on several relationship types, which we'll look at in a preceding slide. And the task then is, are they related? Yes or no? And you can see the top pair, yes, the bottom pair, no. So let's now take a look at the different relationship types. Now let's take a look at the different pairwise types and the statistics behind them. So as you can see, we have 11 different pairs for which we passed out. The first column, the parent-child, father-daughter, father-son, mother-daughter, mother-son. Middle would be grandparents, grandchildren, and the right will be siblings, brother, brother, sister, sister, brother, sister. Now for each pair here, we show the same father, for instance, the same parent-child, grandfather, grandchild, or sibling across different ages, so across their lifetimes. And you can see that we have various pairs for each different pair, various faces for each pair with increase in ages. Statistically, we have much more than any of our predecessors. So families in the wild, we have over 650,000 pairs compared to the second to largest, which was the Kinship Faces in the Wild 2, which had 2,000 pairs. And we're the first to introduce the grandfather, granddaughter, the grandparents, grandchildren pairs. We also have great grandparents and great grandparents, but the pair count was too small at this point to include an evaluation. So now we benchmarked using many of the metric learning and the low-level features that were used previously for this task. As you can see to the left, the different methods, and then the plus the different types of metric learning. And you can see at the bottom here, by fine-tuning the deep models, for instance, Spareface, by pre-training on faces in the wild or Celeb A data sets, and then fine-tuning on the families in the wild, we're able to surpass all the other benchmarks and claim state-of-the-art at this point on this data set. There's now better scores that have been released on recent competitions. For instance, some scores that were released as part of the FG Challenge this year. And this is for the verification task. So random here would be 50%. And now for the classification, which there's still a lot of room for improvement. Random's 1 over 564 now, so it's a lot smaller, but still, the deep models center phase did take the top score here at about just about 16%, but still much room for improvement, but greatly over the one versus rest SVMs. So the deep learning is applicable. That was kind of the proof of principle here. With this data set, we now move on to the promotion piece. We've held several competitions dating back to the 2017 ACM Multimedia competition. We held a competition as part of FG last year, which was in China, in Shan. And then this year, we held the FG competition in France. Please excuse the currently running phase 0. It's of course, this is wrapped up at this point, as the workshop was held earlier this week. And we highly thank the contributors to this, and also if you sat in for that session, thank you very much. And you can learn more about this competition at the link below, and more about Families in Wild at the link above. Currently, we just released a Kaggle competition, which we're quite excited about, so please do check this out. It started on the night of the 14th, May 14th, so it started just earlier this week, and it's already gained some great traction. We find that there's already a lot of people being involved, some kernels being released, a lot of discussion. Do check it out, do get involved. And the submission deadline is August 1st, so you have all summer, and do not hesitate to reach out to any one of us. Thank you so much for sitting in this tutorial. I wish very much I was there with you in France. Not just to give this in person, but just to be there for the FG. This is the first I've missed in 4 years. I couldn't be there because of personal reasons, but you're in great hands with Sayu, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you again, and I hope to see you next year. I will assumingly be at the next FG. So thank you very much. Have a good day. And the deep methods also surpassed humans. We had 100 human subjects and 200 phase pairs, and here you can see that the lows at the minimums are quite small, and it shown that Caucasian males are not very good at this task. Asian males are a little better. Asian females are a little better, and then Caucasian females tended to be the best on average. We had, and again, it's a small sample set for that comparison, because we did have 100 human subjects, and roughly the same for each of those 4 categories. However, we found that from this sample set that the humans were not quite as good as the deep methods, at least for the 200 phase pairs we used. So then we wondered, was it the categories? So for instance, was telling them that they're siblings, or telling them that that's the grandparent, grandchild, and then seeing the photo, and was the photo a grandparent as a child, or the grandchild as a parent, so at different ages? Did that throw them off? So we ran another test about 3/4 of a year later with most of the same human subjects, plus a couple extra to fill in who we could not get in touch with. And this was just a Boolean test, the same 200 faces. Are they related, yes or no, without telling the category? And we found that they scored about the same on average, still about 57%. So humans are not very good at this task, and again, at least for the 200 phase pairs that we used for this evaluation, which was quite interesting to find.